Alright, Lucas, come on, it's bedtime now, I say, as he walks up the stairs, obviously with his head down, knowing it's time for him to go to sleep. I always knew what Lucas was like, and even then, I knew it would be a bit of a hassle to get him to go to sleep. Especially when, "Dad?" he said out through the hallway. Yeah, I knew what this was gonna be. Check into the bed, see if there's any monsters, and then hopefully he'd go off to sleep. Even then, it was a bit of a gamble, but nevertheless, I did it to humour him, and checked into the bed. I said there was nothing there, and then he replied by saying, "Could you check the wardrobe?" At first, I didn't know what to think other than, why should I, considering the fact that he usually just asks me to check under the bed and that's about it. But, as I said, just to humour him and make him feel better, I would. So I looked in the wardrobe, and as expected, nothing was there. Just a bunch of clothes and other random things stored in there, and that was about it. I then tucked him in and said goodnight. He replied by saying goodnight back, and I left contentedly, knowing that at least he wouldn't pest me in the middle of the night, considering he was scared of the dark. After all, most children are at one point, but they learn to grow out of it. After a while of watching TV downstairs, I then realised that it was getting a bit too late and decided I should probably go to bed now as well. Walking upstairs, I could hear my son's TV blurring out into the halls, which furthermore reminded me that it was way past his bedtime. But I didn't have to worry about him sleeping, considering he was most likely already asleep by now. After all, he does often fall asleep very quickly. Like the one time I was driving up to a holiday resort, he fell asleep in the back of the car and surprisingly didn't wake up until we got to the actual resort, which made me laugh a little throughout the entire ride. But anyway, that's off track. After getting to my room, I did all the essential things you would do, like making sure you have a glass of water on your cabinet just in case you want to help yourself to a drink in the middle of the night, or put the TV on just to help you get to sleep. Now, that being said, I don't fall asleep quickly. It takes a decent amount of time for me to actually get ready enough and settled to a point where I can drift off. So, I wait for a bit, and I don't know if this was my imagination, but I did hear faint squeaks in the halls just outside my door. I imagined this would be my son, but I doubt he would be up, especially considering the fact that I just mentioned he sleeps like a rock. Nothing can really disturb him when he's sleeping, that is. This then led to me just waiting out the noise to see if maybe it was the house settling, which doesn't seem that far off, especially considering the fact we only moved in, give or take, a couple of weeks ago, which would make sense, and this was one of the newer houses built on the entire street, so it furthermore adds up in a logical explanation. But it doesn't mean I wasn't on edge. Now I know it's silly for a fully grown adult to be on edge about something being there unexpectedly, but there was something in the back of my mind that just said, what if? And that's what led me to be at least somewhat cautious. I got up the next morning, feeling okay. The noise had definitely stopped, which further proved my suspicion of it being the house. And I went downstairs, did myself a bowl of cereal, proceeded to watch TV and clean the house. Which, after, as you can imagine, all I did with them was just watch more TV. Not really doing much else, to be perfectly honest with you. My son eventually woke up as well, and he came downstairs, not doing particularly much, just walking downstairs and saying hi and all the usual things. It was only when he was going back up to his room that he asked me a question that kind of creeped me out in some respects. "Hey, Dad, was that you last night? I figured you were trying to get something, but you couldn't find it, so after a while you just gave up looking for it?" I said no, because I wasn't looking for anything, and my mind immediately flashed back to the creepy noises on the stairs, which at first I thought it was the house settling, which made sense, and that's really all I told him. The fact that it really might just be the house settling down. Needless to say, he believed me and went straight back to his room, doing whatever it was he would usually do. But this did lead me to question, what truly was that? I mean, he clearly heard it, and I did, but we didn't know what it was. So, this led me to be even more curious, and eventually, by the time it had already gotten to the point where we should all be going back to bed, I decided to see if I could truly understand what this sound was, because maybe there would be a small chance that it would happen again. But this time, I could record it and hopefully know what it was. I mean, it's only natural for human beings to be curious, and this thing happening especially because I don't know what it was and I really wanted to find out. That's where my nightly routine kicks in, making sure my son is tucked into bed as usual, and eventually after making sure everything else has been tended to, I go to bed myself and fall asleep. Except this time, I was ready to make sure I could record these strange happenings. If I didn't see anything, then obviously I would know that it's nothing to really be curious about. It's just a simple matter of natural things happening that occasionally probably would happen naturally, such as sounds happening around a house that is obviously quiet considering all of its residents are now fast asleep. I was just tucking my son to bed when he then stated that obviously if I could check under his bed and in the wardrobe. I first of all checked under the bed and everything seemed fine. A couple of what appeared to be dark patches, as there would be, and that was all. I then looked in the wardrobe and everything was fine, nothing out of the ordinary except for another really weird dark patch in one of the corners, which at first I figured would be perfectly explainable. It could just be the clothes in being positioned in such a way to the point where it may be blocking some of the light. But I also thought that this probably couldn't be the case, as the patch of darkness seemingly was very tall, as if a person was crouched in the wardrobe itself, and that was enough to get my brain to start kicking in and really begin to analyze the situation. My son then knows that because I've halted my progress, that something is clearly wrong, which leads to him asking a question such as, "Hey, Dad, is everything okay over there?" I simply state that everything's fine, and that wasn't particularly a lie. It could just be the shadows, as I was thinking, but I was skeptical. Nevertheless, I told him that everything was fine, and obviously you would need to go to bed considering the fact that it is starting to get really late, and that's all that really happened. He got settled rather pretty quickly and fell asleep. I then decided that it was my turn to actually get settled in, and I went to my room, closed my eyes, and this time I actually got a good night's sleep for once in my life. Usually it would, obviously, as I said before, take me a couple of minutes or so to actually get to sleep, but this time it was almost instantly. I woke up the next morning, as I usually would, and I checked the camera just to see if I did catch anything, and to my surprise, I didn't, or so I thought at first. I could see some air, or what appeared to be air, moving throughout the dimly recorded hallway. It was almost like a beam of light was passing through the hallway, and it was very faint, but I could still see it. This, as you can imagine, led to me questioning the events even more, such as, what was the light, and was it maybe just a glitch with the camera, or maybe was it just some air being picked up? I didn't really know, but this led to me taking more extensive steps into the situation. Over time, I kept on looking around the house, seeing if anything had changed, and to my surprise, things had been changed. Small things, but still noticeable, ranging from different things being moved, and at first I thought this could just be a minor coincidence, as all things are, but something about it just didn't seem like it could be. Something seemed off, and that's the best way I could describe it. Shortly after, Lucas came walking down the stairs and said that he was just going to get a glass of water before he goes to bed. This meant that obviously I would have to do the usual. So he got his water, I walked up the stairs with him, and that's when Lucas hopped into his bed and I did the usual. And I even looked into his bed as well, as that was what I had to do. And this time, I swear, even though it was for a split second, I saw a patch of air, or what appeared to be air, move about under the bed. This was alarming beyond belief. Now, this is what made me want to move houses, and that's what I got ready to do. We were actually getting ready to move the next morning, but that meant that we would have to deal one more night before we left. This just so happens to be the night where everything came to light, if you'll pardon the pun. It started off simply, with the day being normal, as you can imagine. Not much really happened. Lucas was playing in his room, I was watching TV, and every now and again I would get a couple of knocks at the door for deliveries and all that, but mostly just a regular day. I then decided that I would go outside, do a bit of gardening, seeing as it was the last day, and figured that if I was going to do something productive in my life, it would probably be gardening. After a while, I decided to head back in, now knowing that it was beginning to get a lot more darker outside, which symbolized that it really was beginning to get late. After heading back in, I made sure Lucas was ready to go to bed, and that he was. I looked everywhere again, as I usually do. It's part of the daily routine, or nightly routine. And after I did, I then went over to my own room, and I only drifted off for a couple of seconds, and I remember waking up in the middle of the night. And as my eyes began to adjust, I could slowly make out the shape of a face. At first I thought it was my son Lucas, but as my eyes gradually adjusted to the darkness, I saw it wasn't him at all. It was a horrific amalgamation of what looked like eyes and brain matter and everything that could resemble a regular human's face, but horribly distorted and with really horrific details that I really don't want to mention. Needless to say, after that night, I experienced enough, and I was ready to leave. Now, the moving was okay. We moved to a nice house. Still live there to this very day, as a matter of fact, but I'll never forget that face. Or that thing. And I know this is silly. I know. It's very silly for a grown adult to be looking everywhere in the middle of the night and just checking to make sure there is truly nothing in the corners lurking about, but I do that sometimes, and I obviously also look under to make sure that my son is okay getting to sleep, because I didn't want to alarm him with all the stuff I experienced in the first house, and to my surprise, he's been going to sleep awfully well recently. But I can't say the same for me. I can't. And just a point of advice, if you do buy a house and your son or daughter or whoever is kind of telling you about these things, I'm not saying to take it as seriously as you may think, just keep it in mind. I know I should have done.